everyone, welcome back to the channel. So for today, we are actually starting part 2 of our series, our case study of following along with Athena's journey. So if you're just joining the series, this is where we are actually breaking apart one of my clients' journeys to talk about the ins and outs, ups and downs of being able to lose fat without damaging your metabolism. That is what we're all about here on this channel. And I thought it would be really fun to break down the journey of a client who is actually doing it right now. If you haven't seen part 1, or if you have, just for a recap, we are following along with Athena right now. And Athena is, at the time of this recording, she was down about 20 pounds. So her goal was 25 pounds. And she was closing in on that. She was about 5 pounds away at the time of this recording. She is now probably about 3.5 pounds away. So she is well on her way to hitting her goal, which is a few weeks from now. Just so that you know, she is still losing after this particular interview. She has been monitored by me as far as everything that she is putting into her face for about 33 weeks total. So I really wanted to clarify on some of the timelines that were mentioned in the last video, because like I said, I want to be as clear as possible, but also like really, really transparent in how this journey plays out. We did pre-record the parts that we're about to watch, but just like last time, I am going to follow along, pausing here and there to really reiterate some of the key points of this particular journey. So we talked about Athena's official cut journey starting about 24 weeks before the time of this recording. So she had been in a fat loss phase for about 24 weeks. Now, today I'm saying 33 weeks. Why? Because of the fact that before we stepped into the official fat loss phase, I took Athena through what I call priming. Whenever a client is, if I'm not actually monitoring all the things that they're doing up until that point, I like to take them through a series of priming. This is very similar to our metabolism reset process, where I know that they are eating at maintenance or above before we move into a fat loss phase. So it's really important to understand that even though last time we really talked about how over a 24-week period, Athena has averaged about 2,000 calories. It's important to understand that the reason why she was able to lose fat averaging that 2,000 calories is because the 9 weeks prior to starting her cut phase, we did make sure that she was eating at 2,500 calories or more. That is the very first important critical piece of information that I want to discuss today. 9 weeks of priming, and then we started a cut phase of about 24 weeks. Now, as I talked about last time, there has been maintenance weeks throughout that. So her actual time of eating at a deficit level of calories has only been about 18 weeks, because 6 of those 24 weeks were her eating at that 2,500 calories, again, eating at the maintenance level. I talked a little bit more about maintenance weeks last episode. So if you didn't catch that, you may want to go back and talk about that part, just so I don't have to talk about it this time. The reason why I want to reiterate that is because when we're looking at something like 20 pounds of weight in 24 to 33 weeks, now we're talking about, that can seem like it's not a whole heck of a lot, especially within weight loss circles, because of the fact that we're used to seeing things done Biggest Loser style, where 20 pounds is lost in like a week or so, or at least like a month. We're usually looking to lose that type of weight really, really fast. So the reason why I wanted to really emphasize that with Athena's journey is because of the fact that when you calculate up that 33 weeks, it is very important to understand that almost half of those weeks she was eating at or above 2,500 calories. So it's not all about the cut. A lot of times we place so much emphasis on fat loss, on lowering our calories, and we're in such a rush to get to the deficit eating because that is all that we know when it comes to fat loss. Those higher eating phases are the most important. So again, recognize that 15 out of the 33 weeks that we have been monitoring Athena's eating have been not in a deficit at all. There's only been 18 total weeks of deficit eating where that has led to the 20-pound loss that we're talking about now. That's the first thing. And the second is what we're getting ready to watch in today's clip. And that is the fact that during this time period, we were monitoring and still are monitoring Athena's progress using body composition scan. And that is because all the hard work that we've put into building Athena's metabolism over the years, we want to make sure that now that she is fully committing to this cut phase, that nothing happens to damage her metabolism and that she is able to lose fat not just weight and not precious muscle mass. So we're going to go ahead and dive into today's section of the interview. And I will be kind of pausing as we go to emphasize some points and to give you a little bit more information about the body composition scans. So another one of the things that we did this time that you committed to was getting the scans.
Yes,
so
scans. Yes.
Tell me about, like, because again, like, this is like Athena 2.0, right? Like, what you're getting the scans now, you're getting them more frequently even than I have a lot of clients. Typically I'm telling people like do them once every like 12 weeks or something. We're watching yours a lot more closely because we're trying to like hit a specific timeline, plus because you're doing the mini cuts. So how did that first scan feel? Like,
you know, that was like totally eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, because like here, like you think you know like what your body fat percentage is based on like maybe like what your Fitbit scale says or whatever. But this DEXA scan is like the real deal. And it was just crazy to see, you know, because it shows like your left side versus your right side, how much muscle, how much fat. I was like, wow, that was just crazy. I actually really like going for them too. I mean, it's just, you know, it gives you like actual numbers to go by, you know, you're not just guessing anymore, you know.
So while Athena's talking about the scans here, I want to reiterate that she used specifically DEXA scans. So there are different types of body composition scans that you can get, and that truly is another series for another time, but there are like body impedance type measurements, there's BOD-POD, there's those like in-body scans, and there's DEXA. So there's multiple ways of doing this, but one of the things that you'll notice that Athena actually emphasizes is she talks a little bit about how she has that body fat scale. So a few of us probably have these at home, and it's important to know that those are always going to be a little squeamish in the results. So they're not always going to give you all of the facts. Many times they tend to move up or down based on whether or not your weight is moving up or down. So for years, that's pretty much what Athena used. She just used the scale as her tool of measuring her body fat. So one of the things, like I said, because of the fact of how we were working on this timeline that we were starting, we knew that there was a specific thing that we were trying to get her into this specific body fat range for. And whenever we are actually working to lose body fat, I highly recommend someone knowing where their starting point is as far as body fat, because as Athena mentions, it does leave a lot of guessing. And what tends to happen with guessing is that we guess based on our past experiences. And because of our connection to the scale and scale weight, it's really hard sometimes to justify the weight either moving too slow or going in what we consider the wrong direction when we don't know what's actually happening beneath the surface of the skin. So the reason why these scans were so important is because when we're talking about this 20-pound weight loss, which again may not seem like that much when you're comparing it to regular diets, but the important thing to understand is that we're not looking at traditional diets here. So when we're talking about losing weight in a sustainable way and keeping the muscle mass and only losing fat, it really helps if you know how much fat you have and how much you're losing. So 20 pounds of fat loss is about the equivalent of 30 pounds or so weight loss. So that's another reason why, even though the numbers may seem lower, Athena is going to be much more satisfied than she would had she just gone the route of a regular diet and losing 30 pounds. Because that 30 pounds with a regular diet would also include probably about 5 or 6 pounds of muscle loss. So not only would she have to lose more weight, but she would also be losing muscle, which would be slowing her metabolism down in the meantime. This is what so many people experience when they go on traditional diets. And because they're only looking at that scale weight and or the number that the scale is saying that their body fat percentage is, they keep striving to get lower and lower in weight, and they're losing muscle mass, and the metabolism is getting slower and slower and slower. So it's really important to understand that the reason why we brought these scans into play is because on most diets, people are going to lose about 20 to 25% of their muscle mass with the amount of weight that they're losing. So 20 pounds lost on a regular diet would actually probably only be about 15 pounds of fat. Whereas Athena's scans, this clarity that she's getting from it is because of the fact that it has been all fat that she is losing. So that is something that's so important and something that I'm so proud of with Athena, because I try to keep my clients as far under that 20-25% number as possible. So back to Athena.
You know,
yeah, not just wondering, am I losing fat, or just depending on like, oh my gosh, the scale didn't move, like, you know what I mean, and not really understanding what's happening from day to day, because that's one of the biggest things that, you know, when we're telling people like throw the scale away or not look at the scale, it's because we just want to take the focus off of it meaning everything, because people don't know, you know what I mean? And our human instinct is to kind of panic a little bit when it goes up and to be happy when it goes down. But if we don't know what those numbers are doing, like, is it good that it's going down, or did we lose muscle? Is it bad that it's going up, or did we gain muscle? So being able to have that check and balance system, plus yours was way different from your home scale, which is something that we talk a lot about too.
Yeah, it was really off. Yeah, because I just have like a plain old Fitbit scale that syncs with my phone, and I think it was showing me like, I don't know, like 4% higher, or something like that. But
so
the definitely
was it?
I highly recommend those. Whoever can get them done. What's that?
At home only goes down when your weight goes down.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
So that was kind of a big difference too. And not only that, but because of the changes that you were seeing in your scan, your husband started getting them too. So Mike is losing fat right alongside you.
Yes, we're doing it together. You know, he's like thoroughly convinced this is the only way to do it.
That is
he feels like he's been brainwashed all his life, because like he's been watching me for the past 10 years do this, and he's like, okay, you know, like a few years, and he's like, she kind of looks the same. I don't see a lot of changes. And then, you know, I start doing these mini cuts, and I start losing and looking different, and then people start asking me questions. It's so funny.
Yes, that is
so so me and Mike are doing it together. So he's lost 12 pounds.
That's so awesome. And that's the thing, is so many women ask that, you know, like, they're, you know, they kind of want their husbands to get on board, but a lot of times we want them to get on board before we've done the things. And that's one of the biggest things that I tell people is do exactly what you like, just like commit to the process. People will start asking you questions. People will notice. And all of the same people that were kind of looking like, what is she doing? We'll start being like, so how are you doing this?
Yes. And, you know, even like during like cutting, like cut weeks, like cutting with somebody else that's, you know, who's also cutting, makes it a lot easier than if he's like eating, you know, ice cream and whatever.
Right.
And I'm cutting, you know, because before in the past I was on my own. And I'd be like weighing everything, and he'd be like, oh, just eat it.
It's not that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah. Now he gets it. So
yes. And that's so awesome. And it's great because we actually had a chance to meet you and Mike in person, which obviously we know each other because we talk all the time, but we got a chance to meet in person in 2020, and I got a chance to meet Mike as well. So that was fun. And so obviously now, like, I'm happy that he's getting the results and doing the things and committing to this process with you, because you guys are definitely on a roll right now. So that's another benefit, I think, from you getting those scans, is because he was right there with you. I mean, obviously he would have started noticing the outside changes at some point too, because they were coming, but he caught on by like, what, your second scan? Was it that he started? He's like,
the second scan. Yeah.
You do this too.
Yep.
All right, guys, I'm actually going to stop it right there because I did want to make sure that this little piece had its own segment. And that is because so many people are resistant, even my own clients, to getting scans. So I really wanted to emphasize this particular part where Athena really says that those scans did make a difference for her, because of the fact, like I said, when you are operating without having those scans, without knowing what lies beneath, you're only depending upon the scale. So would she have been happy still with losing 20 pounds over this amount of time? I mean, at this point, probably, but along the way, it could have produced a lot more emotions and emotional responses and discouragement during time periods where maybe things weren't moving as quickly as she'd hoped. Obviously, once the amount of weight starts to pile up, we can say, well, I'd be happy with whatever amount of weight loss. So 20 pounds can seem like a lot then, but it was those first few pounds and being able to get those scans, like I said, for her, a lot closer together than some people. Some people, I may only told them to get them quarterly, but when I'm watching somebody as closely as I am Athena, then that's a different story. I really want to make sure that she's seeing that there is progress. So for her to see immediately her very first scan that she had lost fat, even though it only seemed like a couple of pounds on the scale, that was enough for her to keep moving. And then, like she said, it was even enough for her husband to jump on board because of the fact that he saw that. Whereas he may not have actually jumped on board until this point where she was about 20 pounds down, and it was a much more visual result because now you can actually see it on the surface. It's those initial moments when things are first starting out, when you're first figuring out if things are working for you, to be able to see in those moments that you are losing fat and have just that little bit of momentum and to keep going is going to make a big difference. So if you have been on the fence about getting scans, I would highly recommend it because of the fact that they can keep you calm during those times when it seems like nothing's happening, because what's happening beneath the surface is always going to be so much more important than what's happening on the scale or even what you can see, because what's happening beneath the surface will eventually add up to become what you can see. So regardless of if you're in a metabolism reset phase or a cut phase, it's always going to be beneficial to know, am I rebuilding lost muscle mass? Is my metabolism increasing? Am I actually losing fat? Am I preserving that metabolism that I built? So that is it for now. If you guys have questions about DEXA scans or about any of those types of scans, then leave them below and I can do a separate video talking specifically about the scans. But for now, I want to keep it as truncated as possible to make sure that we are actually addressing Athena's case study. So make sure that you give this a like if you are interested in this series and you want to keep going, because we have more. So next week, I am going to be back with part 3 of this Athena case study. Again, breaking down further the things that have happened along the way, including something that you may have heard Athena mention today. Did she say 10 years? We're going to talk about that in the next couple of episodes. Like, what? 10 years to lose 20 pounds? Who knows? You'll find out if you keep going with us in this series. So thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you guys next week.